there. Welcome to the Washington Glass School, just outside of Washington, D.C. I'm Michael Janis.
I'm Tim Tate.
We're going to take you on a very short video tour of our studio and show you what we're working on and how our studio's set up. Come on in.
There we go. There's the full studio.
We're in our little gallery in the front of the studio, and we're going to talk about some of the work that's in our studio that's on exhibit and some of the shows that some of this work is going to once the pandemic has cleared up. But in the meantime, some of it will be featured in Habatat Gallery's virtual exhibit of the show, which is called
Habatat Direct at glass48.com on May 8th. All right, so for that show, you may remember Michael and I did a collaborative piece of the wall, the last sofa, and also one for St. Petersburg. This is the same mixture of three techniques. You have Michael's powder drawings that are so gorgeous. You've got my cast objects, and Michael and I have taught this three-dimensional bas relief all over the world, that deep relief dry plaster casting. So we decided to combine those three techniques into making these particular pieces. This is called The Best Is Yet to Be, with the Robert Browning poem being Grow Old With Me, The Best Is Yet to Come. That was kind of our springboard of images of love. So all these are different images of love. Like this is, there's strength in mending a broken heart. You know, here's portrait of your loved one. Here's Michael's lover's eye. So these are all, oh, this one's good. This one is, if you do get married and you do find love, you've won the lottery. You won the Rotary. So,
but this has a number of different techniques that we're featuring. And one of the ones that I really like is a way that we work with glass that is something that we've taught around the world, which is the deep relief dry plaster casting, which gives you a really nice dimensional casting effect in using a kiln.
and we have a second one over here behind you. We did two of these for the show. And the second one we did is called Lending Library. This one, it represents the title of 8 different books. And one of the fun of this is trying to have people guess what is the title of each of those books. I think the only hint I'll give this one. This is Frankenstein.
Oh.
So, but I figured I'll figure that one. The other one, you have 7 other titles to guess. Some are more obtuse than others, but you'll get them when you as soon as you get them, you'll go, of course.
Now, this technique, we've done it for a number of artwork collaboration panels. And the panel next to it, which is the Longing for Transcendence, is more about spiritual qualities that are expressed in the glass work.
One of the things we really want to show is dimensionality. You see how the light refracts through this. Every piece is built up in layers. It's sort of like almost a collage. So all these molds were designed to make sure there was all this texture to it. So that's one of the important parts to us, the translucence. We use a lot of lenses and those kind of images here. This is an image I've used for many years. This is me grabbing the virus and actually gaining strength from stopping the virus, gaining control of it. And this is 30 years ago I started using that, and of course now it has additional meaning.
Yeah. It's a really nice piece, and the color is spectacular. I don't think that the cell phone camera I'm using is giving it justice, but it really is a strong piece with texture, and it exploits the qualities that are in glass with the translucency and the tactile nature of it. And a lot of these pieces, it's just something you want to touch and really feel and say that there is something that is not fragile and delicate about it, but actually a robustness to the piece.
There you go.
There is a collaborative piece that you're working on right now with Lucy Lyon.
Yeah.
That's right next to here.
So you may remember that Lucy Lyon and I did one for Sofa Chicago this last time, which was a gentleman coming out of a doorway. Now this is the woman version of that, with her dog, of course. On this one, we titled this Josephine. And the reason we titled Josephine is that is the wife of Edward Hopper. And while his images seem to be isolated women frequently, the woman used for the model for all of his work was his wife Josephine. So We thought there was a romance kind of hidden within that with that isolation. Not unlike these days, but that's the newest piece right there. It hasn't even gotten to the gallery yet.
And it's got a little dog in the bottom.
It does have a dog.
And the piece next to it is one of your lenticulars.
A lenticular there.
So it's always shifting its imagery as you walk around it, so it's always a different feel.
Yep.
I give you a look at the rest of the gallery. The studio is in a bit of a disarray because everything happened with the shutdown that made everything that was in process stop suddenly. One of the pieces that I'm going to be sending out to Habatat for the Habatat Direct show is a large 4-panel piece where I'm using glass powders to create portraiture. And even though I'm using portraiture as the basis of a lot of my artwork, it's all about expressing the emotions and the feelings of the subjects within. But I'm just using glass powder that I'm pressing and shifting, pushing around with an X-Acto blade, and using that to be something that's fused into the glass and tell my story that way. Some of the other artists that work from our studio is Terry Bailey, and I believe that her work will be featured in the Silver Show at Habatat. Some of the other artworks that I've done, much more colorful and abstractions of the portraits. And in our studio, we teach here, and it's a working studio that a number of artists work from. And I think that when Tim set up the studio in 2001, the direction was to be more narrative-written, more content-driven artwork rather than technique-driven. Is that right?
Yeah, there's going to be certainly more representational, less abstracted work. We're going to tell stories with our artwork, and I think that most of the artists that work out of here, their strength is in the stories they tell.
This is a work that I'm still in the process of working on. It's about relationships and the walls that we have to build up, especially in this day and age where we want a certain amount of distance, that we're worlds unto ourselves. One of the other artists who works from our studio is Irwin Timmers. His work is a lot about environment and recycling and the different themes within that. He also explores using electronics and computers in his work to give an always changing effect to his work. He really specializes in using recycled glass and getting a much different effect and color quality that I've never seen with any regular glass, much less recycled glass. And I think around here is one of your other large works, Mr. Tate.
Here's one of the large infinity pieces. This is a Dutch master study, a Dutch floral study in the sense of old Dutch master floral studies that I love so much. And so I did my own kind of version on this. All this is cast individual objects, and of course all in that beautiful kind of butterscotch color and intimacy going on. That's
It's quite a piece.
yeah, something.
It's a gorgeous color.
Thanks. I should just take that home. I love that piece.
And just going around the studio, I see that you have another collaborative piece.
I do. This one is from Kathleen Elliott and I together. She does absolutely stunning nature studies and lamp work, and I thought it was just perfect to go inside of an endless mirror. So here it is, me just now putting it together. She sent me all the parts, and now the next thing that'll happen, I'll put it into the mirror frame.
It's really nice. And over here is one of my other pieces that I'm going to be submitting for Habitat's show on their direct, part of their 48th anniversary show. I think that's why they're calling it Class 48. And again, it's using the frit powders to be as expressive as I can to create an imagery that's very evocative yet compelling, and kind of draws you in about finding out qualities of the person and their identity in the glasswork.
Right now, we've gotten a bunch of questions on Facebook that they've asked us to answer on the studio tour. So we're gonna.
Before you go there, I see all these kind of glass domes here.
Oh, that's right. You know, I a lot of you know me from my glass domes, the video domes, the other dome work I've done over the past. And so I am doing several new dome pieces. So, you know, I always work on 5 or 6 at a time. Everybody here does, and this is a whole new thing that I'm gonna be doing as a non-collaboration piece for a while. So I'll be doing this during the flu, you know, isolation here at the studio. So I'll probably be working on the dome pieces for the next couple months.
Some really interesting pieces in there. You got cats reading books.
I got cats,
And
I got
llamas,
I got crocodile lady, I got all kinds of things. Now, who knows what may happen?
We did get some questions that people had submitted and wanted to know more about us, and I might pose some of these questions for you to answer.
Sure.
From Judith Hartsong, I want to know if you both imagine being an artist from childhood.
I imagine it. I was the son of a mom, an aunt, and a grandmother who were artists, so I always thought that I would become an artist. My parents did not share that vision, and I remember trying to get them to send me to Cranbrook, and now I know there's not a way in hell they could have afforded Cranbrook.
Cranbrook is beautiful.
Yeah, it sure is. It's also very expensive. We didn't have any money, so that was not going to happen. But I always wanted to be. They veered my career kind of away from art, and then I finally came back to it, and I'm really happy I did.
Yeah, a similar type thing. I always wanted to be an artist. I loved drawing as a kid. You could have keep me quiet, and I think to this day, if you just put paper in front of me, I'll be drawing on it. But my parents were more encouraging if I had a different career choice when I went to college, and I became an architect, and I was an architect for 20 years. But I would say that in both our cases, our backgrounds that brought us back into the art world is a different source that we use for our strength in our work. I think that it is something that we could not have arrived at this path without going the direction we came.
That's true.
I mean, our lives would have been much different if you had gone to Cranbrook. Your work would have been a different field completely.
It's true. And also, the reason I came back is I got a terminal diagnosis 36 years ago, and decided to start living my life. I was supposed to have 1 year to live, so I decided to live the life I was meant to live as opposed to the one I was living for other people. And I started working in glass then, and then I, kept living. And that's where I am now. And so that was a good motivator in a lot of ways. Thinking you're going to die in a year for over a decade is a way to really motivate you in thinking of an existential existence, and I did just that. So here is where it ended.
From Judith as well, what's your best piece of advice on the business of art for emerging artists?
Okay, Michael, go.
Well, I would say from my point of view, it's being flexible, that a lot of things that you want to say that is what I'm going to do, you're going to have to always be saying, what's your next option? What are your alternates for it? Because whatever you thought it was going to be, whatever the direction it was going to be, it's going to change while you're in mid-process, while you're working on it. If anything, it'll just be as we are right now. The world has changed dramatically in the last few months. So whatever I've been working on, I have to be able to flexible to say what are alternates on ways to present it, on ways to think about the artwork, and on ways to talk about the artwork, and how I'm working with it. Where I once had endless resources of a studio, I now have limited resources because we can only get in what we can get in. So that's part of that I would say is just be flexible.
I would say also diversify. Think of public art, think of galleries, think of exhibitions, think of museum shows. I would do everything possible because it takes all of them to help you survive, and then just outlive everybody.
Chip Montague writes, you like working in collaboration with artists, and I would say that one's right to you.
Well, I mean, right now I'm in a lot of collaborative work right now, but certainly the best collaboration we have is Michael and I have known each other for going on 20 years now. So when we were working on our collaborative works together, actually it was the easiest collaboration either of us have ever done because we so anticipated the way the other was going to think already, because we know we were all trained in this kind of covenant that we have to think very similarly when we set the studio up. So going into it, it was kind of a joy that we didn't have to re-educate anybody else, that we just worked on each piece. It worked out really well. I think that I really happen to love collaboration. It's more like a synergy. It makes both of us better at piece. And I think that helped that happens a lot, and I was really happy to do it. So
I do like the collaborations because it does take me out of my comfort zone. I mean, I like to work in a certain way, and I like to be very much in control of what that story will be. And by having that control pulled away from me at times makes me rethink how I would express it now that I don't have my go-to answer being the one that's going to be used. And so I had to think around situations and around questions to say, well, then the real question will be this, and that's how I can put it forward. And I think you've been working very successfully with people like Lucy Lyon and Karen
Sure.
to get these kind of pieces. And I know you've worked with other artists like Sean Hennessy and Pete Duvall, photographer, and
Richard Schnellenberg.
yeah,
also.
and you had done a video installation piece with them. So I think it's really interesting that you're pulling yourself out of your material even to different materials to say how do you incorporate all of that to make a cohesive artwork piece.
Sure. I mean, I would do it. I would work with other artists forever if I could, but I'm also very happy being isolated. But I like both ways, you know.
Yeah. From Fred Mead, I'd like to know about your personal feelings of your struggle with glass and making it into a medium of expression.
I remember early on, the Washington Post said I was an evangelist for glass. I remember them identifying me as an evangelist, and at the time, I really was. At the time, many galleries and certainly museums wouldn't even accept glass in the fine art world. I didn't have a glass gallery at the time, so I had fine art world, and so I would come with these amazing glass sculptures, and they would go, "Yeah, it's great, but it's glass. We don't carry glass." So it was a tough thing for a while, but we certainly overcame that. I think by the time you came along, it was pretty good by the time you came along.
Well, I mean, I had to start from zero. I did not have any glass background, so I had to learn everything from this is glass, this is not compatible, how you fire it, what happens in there. And so when I worked in the studio and I was the shop monkey, setting up and taking down every glass works, I learned a lot by just seeing what happened, what are the properties, how to set kilns, what the mistakes were, and I would internalize all of that knowledge, and I say I still draw on that. In the most straightforward fusing beginning bowl class, I will say all of that is still relevant to what I'm working on. It's just that how I use that knowledge to tell a story, that the simplest project that we're doing can still be very powerful. And I like the fact that from the basics, you can expand on it and grow from that for storytelling in glass.
And that's what we do best here, I think, is storytelling in glass. I think that's really what the strength of this studio is.
I think we do learn our craft and then we take it to the next level and build on that knowledge to say we've learned the basics, and so where do you take it to the next level?
Sure.
From Mary Leitner, are you using any historical references like you did with the single eyes? I think that means the lover's eyes.
The lover's eyes, yeah, we've used the lover's eyes here for many years because it's such a beautiful image, and also we have the Smithsonian American Art Museum right down the street, and they have a drawer full of them. So they have been influential with us for some time here. But we use a lot of historical images. We do references to books, we do references to movies, references to history, references to events.
Pop culture.
Pop culture.
It is a thing too when you're dealing with persons of a certain age to be able to say that we're drawing in from that reference, and also contemporary pop culture.
Sure.
Because a lot of that is just a mashup of something that is part of where we are right now at this moment in time.
Sure.
But you've used the lover's eye in a lot of, even in your video pieces, you had that blinking eye through the bushes and the trees.
Oh, of course.
It was just that circle with an eye in it. And I remember you had cast people for their eye qualities, that you had certain eyes that were
We
stronger.
actually had an eye cast call. So we had like 20 people come in and have their eye video. That was kind of fun.
But the idea of the lover's eye is that you would have in Victorian times these images of the lover or the person you're having a special connection with. It's just their image of an eye, and it's sometimes in a secret place like inside your cloak or something like that you could look at and kind of feel connected to. But I think that a lot of times you weren't supposed to know exactly who it is because it's just the detail of an eye.
Frequently it was someone seeing someone that they weren't necessarily supposed to be seeing. So it was just an eye portrait. So if indeed the locket was found, the lover could not be identified.
Well, I like that kind of notion that there's a little bit of a secret going on.
There's a secret going on.
From Osnat in Israel, can you discuss the process from idea to application in glass?
Let's use the wall. because the wall's good. We came up with a theme for the wall, for all the walls. Let's use the first one.
Man and nature.
Yeah, we used man and nature as our overlay. And then we had 56 separate tiles that we had to come up with that we would both agree on, representing man and nature in some way.
Yeah.
And we wanted a certain number to be Michael's drawings, a certain number to be my castings, and a certain number to be the overlay of deeply dry plaster casting, so that no one technique overwhelmed it. And then we would do that. The second wall, we had another 56. We've had at this point we've had about 200 different ways of casting these tiles for different meanings, and I don't think we're going to run out. I think we're pretty I don't know what I call it, but we're adept at taking a tile and having it mean something obscure, I think.
Obscure.
Yeah.
But I would say that a little bit on that topic that you're bringing, a lot of times for the tiles or the concepts, I would have a set idea saying, this is what I want to do, and I'm going to tell it this way. I want it to be a boat on water, and I'm going to show it this way, because I like that kind of nature. It's very meaningful in terms of being alone on a boat.
Sure.
So how I present it is going to be something that in my mind I'm very set on. It'll be this way. And even though Tim will be saying, why aren't you trying it this way? I'm going to be just so dead set, because I am stubborn, and I will just say, how do I find it and make it that tile? And once it's out of my system, I can probably relax then and say, it's not as strong as I would like it to be. So then I finally am open to those suggestions. But until I get it through out of my system, a lot of times I have to at least carry it through the direction, the arc that I thought it was going to take onto there.
You know, of those 56 tiles, we had 65 or something. I mean, we had extras. We had ones we didn't use.
Yeah.
After we made them, we realized they didn't really show the point we were trying to make as well as we'd hoped.
Yeah, and we remade a couple of them to say this is how we want it. And even of those, we remade them again because it wasn't quite the story we wanted it to be. And it was kind of a nice thing. There is a challenge in the collaborative piece where you're dealing with essence of times and aspects of what kilns are available and how it's being shown. And so there is a thing to collaboration too, to start saying where does it fit for both people to be happy with it.
Unfortunately, we were in great agreement through most of this whole process, which was actually a lot of fun to do.
Yeah, and different than our regular work life too.
Very different, and that was probably why it was pleasant, because it was so different than our regular work. So we never thought of anything because no one had ownership of it. It was a group ownership. I will say that from the beginning of that concept of man and nature until it hung at Habatat was 3 months.
Yeah.
I mean, that was, it might seem like it was short, but there was a long time in making work and
each one is an
finishing
artwork
the
piece
pieces.
by itself.
Yeah.
I mean, each one was a separate story that then had to go along with the other stories. I mean, it's like you're looking at a compilation of short stories into one novel and then saying, do they all work?
That's true. It was like a 56 chapter novel is what it was.
And you did start saying this one first, no, that one first, and what is the center tile? All of those are things that we thought through, even in the pieces that we're doing for the Habatat show of direct. I mean, some of those are as to what is the hierarchy of where you see it. And on a circle, it's a little bit different because there is no, in a sense, top, but there is in the presentation of how it's hung in the gallery as to what is the first tile that we start the story on.
Next question.
From Bob Tapp, what's it like to work with a large gallery like Habatat Galleries in Detroit? I'm going to turn to you on that one.
You know, I've had small galleries and large galleries, but I would say a gallery like Habatat, especially if they're really behind you in your work, which Habatat is for us, and I'm really happy to be supported by them. They have the resources to really help you with your career dramatically. So I would say you can't do better than that, actually. I think for me, it was a good collaboration.
You've been with Habatat for a number of years.
Long time.
Yeah.
And I felt from the beginning that it was the right gallery for me. And I think it probably, well, and I have other galleries too, but I happen to love the Habatat one. It's the only glass gallery I have.
I mean, to me, it is an important thing that galleries and the artist, there is a very close and intense relationship. That if it's a good relationship, both people are getting the most out of it, both the gallery and the artist. It is a thing that both people have to work on it, and you do have to follow up and never take anyone for granted, either direction.
So this video that you're seeing now that we're posting on YouTube will be shown with many other videos of artists from Habatat who are going to take you on the gallery studio tours for them, and it's going to be under the Habatat Direct show, and it'll be at glass48.com, and it's going to, the video of all the studio tours, or of the show at least, will be released on May 8th, and also a link to all the artist studio tours. So all that's coming up there. That should be pretty exciting. And in this world today, they're not going to have their regular show come to it. It's going to be a video show and a walk through the studio. So you'll see how that'll play out.
Yeah, I think they also are having bits about from the collectors and the clients and the relationships with the clients. And I'm going to give all that information below. It'll be, I'm going to have that in the YouTube information on the page.
I said they've asked all the artists to tell stories about working with some of the collectors, and some really nice stories about how the interaction occurred. So that'll be nice too.
And I think they're also doing, as you had said, the Habatat Silver show, which is where artists were asked to say, name another artist who's an up-and-coming or an emerging artist that should be featured and be seen as well.
So these are established artists who are saying this is what the next 10 years is going to bring. And there's it's probably their best sideshow they've ever done at Habatat.
Yeah, I've seen some of the images that are going to be in part of that show, and it's truly a spectacular show. I think that it's one of the strongest features that they've had in their international show.
I would say that's true.
Okay, well, hope you can meet up with us at some point in the future. We'd love to actually get to know the people seeing this video. It's a strange thing to be talking in our studio to outside, but if the world does change and we are able to get back and have social distance closer together, we'd love to have you come by and say hi and that you've seen our video.
Send us a Facebook message, text us, we'll be good. An email, we're good with however you want to say hi.
Old school ways are good as well. Okay.
Thank you so much, guys.
Bye-bye.